County Council is now in session. The Honorable Robert Winkler give the invocation Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you for the opportunity to get together. We ask for the wisdom to make the best decisions for each one that's put in front of us, Lord. More than that, Lord, we ask for your peace for all of those that are hurting across the country and all the tragedies that have been going on in the news the last few weeks. We pray for all of our uniformed men and women, Lord, that protect us each and every day, both abroad and here at home. Ask for safe keeping for each and every one of them. Give us all safe travels as we go our separate ways today. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first order of business is to be sworn in for your Board of Commission appointment. When I call your name, if you'd come forward in front of Mr. Kendry, our County Attorney, Diane Carey and Alice Davis. Well, I guess you'll have a quick swearing in. Okay. Under appearances today, we want to recognize the York County 101 Citizens Academy graduates. Bill, did you want to do the recognition?
Yes, I do. You've got the names, right? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Want to talk a little bit about what you already know about York County 101. And basically what this is, it's a free 9-month program that runs from February to October. And the goal is to teach our citizens as much as we can about York County, what we do, why we do things. And it was funny because I actually, at the first class that these ladies and gentlemen were in, I said at the end of the meeting, and I gave them an incident, I said, if you haven't learned why you do that, ask me. They asked me outside, so it worked out well. But during this class, you know, they go through the courthouse, the fire training center, the emergency management operations building, detention center, and they basically learn why we do what we're doing, because, you know, as all of you have said in the past, open government, and we spend their money. And so it's real important that they know that we're not wasting their money and we're doing good things with their money. And based on the results, the reviews I read, one of you all I owe $5 because that was a really good write-up, thank you. But with that being said, I'm going to bring Linda up so we can do names and give out certificates. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Loretta Acker. Rebecca Artis.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Sean Foster, not here. Amanda Foster, not here. Don Gertis.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. How are you doing?
Paul Hendricks. James Jeter.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Patrick McGuire, not here. Johnny Neal, not here.
Hope you enjoy it.
Oh.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Ed Wampler.
Don't stop there. Keep it going. Your time to do it.
Phyllis Wampler.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you.
Diane Willis.
Thank you.
All right, you need to frame that. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you.
Robert Willis.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Enjoy it.
That's great.
Did you enjoy it?
That's it.
Here, thank you, ma'am.
And just for our citizens, our next class starts in February. If you get with Linda, she can get you in the class. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
We are too. Thank y'all for doing it.
And just so everybody knows, and I know you already know this, but this class would not work without Linda. She makes it, she puts it together, she schedules it, she sits down during our presentations to make sure we know what we're talking about. She does a great job, she really
And we
does.
hear a lot of pride in the citizens' feedback when they take it, so it's turned out to be a really valuable program.
Yeah. And we thank you for letting it happen.
Next order of business is public forum. No, he didn't. Yeah. First person that signed up is that Sammy Lytle, I think? Sammy Lytle? If you would, just come up and give your name and address. And remember, you have up to 2 minutes.
Yes, I'm Sammy Lila from Rock Hill, South Carolina, on 19 Freedom Road, and I'm a member of a New Hope United Methodist Church, and I was a trustee on board, so the church has been standing like 138 years. And my issues is the road in the last 3 years, the traffic has changed. High flow pickup on the road is like 10 to 15%. And it's got, on the, from Hollis Lake to 161 of high flow traffic, back and forth, the shortcut, and from 161 back to Hollis Road is a shortcut. And so it's very bad. Road, and the cars is running between 35 to 50 miles per hour. Dust is all over the front of the church, and it's a high issue. And the road haven't got good maintenance over the period of years.
Can you state the name of the road so Chairman can hear it?
Yeah, I was gonna ask,
The
thank you.
name of the road?
What-
Asper Road,
Asper?
Aspen.
Aspen Road,
yes. Aspendale Road.
gotcha.
I think that's in your area, Britt.
It is. Dean, are you here? Can you check on that? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next person is Frazier Crawford.
I just signed in with 20, I thought you were supposed to sign in as.
Oh, okay. So you didn't want to speak? God bless you. Next person is Lloyd Collins, I think. Yes, sir. Be sure to give name and address.
Yeah, my name is Lloyd Collins. I have a 6-acre building lot on Apple Blossom Road, just outside of York. And I went to the Planning Commission recently and was informed that I cannot have a travel trailer on my lot while I build my house. And I feel I need to have it there so I can stay there periodically to protect my property from vandalism and theft. To me, they did not offer me any provision whatsoever to apply for a variance or post a bond or anything. It seems like just an arbitrary ordinance that, you know, when you consider that York County is 700 square miles and has houses anywhere from $20,000 to several million, and we have this one-size-fits-all ordinance that there's no way around. I don't understand. I mean, I would consider it a burden to me, a hardship to me that I can't stay there. I currently live 2 hours away. And so for me to build my house and commute is not possible. All I'm asking for is either some kind of amendment or special permit. I mean, I can't believe that in an area like this, with there's so much building going on, that one travel trailer, now, mind you, I have a 6-acre lot that's wooded, and I'd only be clearing maybe a third of an acre in the middle. So nobody's even gonna see this. I'll post a bond that says I'll remove it, or, and I won't live in it once my house is built. And then just so you can see, I'll give you these pictures to look at.
What was the address again?
2015 Apple Blossom Road.
Is that you, Robert?
This, my lot is right about here. And within 150 feet, 150 feet, there's somebody who parks tractor trailers. Within about 750 feet, there has to be 30 junk cars.
Well, why don't, I tell you what, your time's up. Why don't you give it to Mr. Winkler? He's your councilman,
And on the back
and he'll
of
look
these-
into it.
On the back of these pictures are where these are.
right.
There's actually a travel trailer on a lot.
And if you would, this gentleman right here, will you get his number and call him? Well, he's the county manager, but I'll follow up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to suspend the rules to move new business number 1 to immediately following the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. I do want to point out in the consent agenda, since everybody's, obviously it would be a consent agenda item, we have the proclamation for recognizing the World Pancreatic Cancer Day, which is so important. But that was something that would not cause any concern by any council member, so that's in the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item is what we just moved forward. Council to consider adopting a resolution honoring the York County Sheriff's Office, the Leslie Fire Department, and the Piedmont EMS. And I'll go ahead and read the resolution, and if I'll,
Call the spells and.
yeah, right. So we could go ahead and do that now. All the parties involved, if you want to come forward, and every single one of you have to give a speech into the microphone.
Be sorry, man.
Okay, so the resolution is, and here again, Ms. Cox triggered this, whereas the York County Council deems it appropriate to publicly recognize members of the Leslie Fire Department, York County Sheriff's Department, and Piedmont EMS who went above and beyond the ordinary course of duty to protect and save lives, and whereas on September 24th, 2017, Public Safety Communications received a call that Mike Speltz was not breathing, and 911 dispatchers immediately dispatched the York County Sheriff's Office, Leslie Fire Department, and Piedmont EMS to the scene. And whereas Mr. Speltz's daughter and son-in-law, Kristen and Michael Stacks, began CPR until emergency responders could arrive, and whereas upon York County Sheriff's Office arrival, they could see an unresponsive man passed out in the yard, having CPR performed on him, whereas deputies immediately took over CPR until the Leslie Fire Department and EMS could arrive, and whereas upon their arrival, first responders and EMTs assisted with CPR on Mr. Speltz, and whereas emergency responders performed CPR on Mr. Speltz for approximately 25 minutes until it was safe to transport him to the hospital, and whereas through those courageous acts, these heroic individuals demonstrated their character and compassion for the welfare of others, personifying the collective concern of ordinary citizens across the community of York County who voluntarily respond without the thought of danger or reward when others are in need of help. And therefore be it resolved that the York County Council does hereby recognize and honor members of the York County Sheriff's Office, the Leslie Fire Department, and Piedmont EMS on their heroic actions in rescuing this gentleman from an untimely death adopted this 6th day of November, 2017. And we have I guess we need to go have a motion to adopt.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. If, Ms. Cox, if you would, let you hand that out to all parties involved, and if you would like to say anything, every one of you are going to be required to say at least one.
I'm gonna come up there and say something and bring these to each one of you.
We'll give
but
her 10 seconds.
I think one of the things that spoke to me about this story when I heard and when I got the call about what happened was just all of the people that were involved in this, and it speaks to your heart, really, to hear the story come from the Speltz as to how long these gentlemen stayed. I mean, they were in line waiting to perform CPR on Mr. Speltz, and it wasn't just one person's doing, it was all of us working together. And I love the story that you tell. I think it speaks volumes as to what York County is about, And I certainly want to thank the Sheriff's Department, Leslie Fire Department, our EMS first responders, for doing what you did. Because from what I understand and from the story that I've heard, it was nothing short of a miracle. And I'd love to hear from you all, and I'll come down here and pass these out to you.
I'd like to thank y'all for allowing us to come in and to honor the ones behind me for coming out on September the 24th. It was a horrific day, and Mike had went into cardiac arrest. He's never really ever been sick in his life, and right in our front yard. And my daughter and son-in-law, they work for Comporium in the city of Rock Hill. And I think it's just so important, these companies that's training their employees to do CPR, because if it wouldn't been for them, they kept him alive for 8 minutes until the sheriff's department got there. And what the little bit I can remember, because my focus was on my husband, was, I seen the people just coming and standing in line, waiting their turn and fighting to save his life, and the people praying all around him. I feel like God had his angels all in place from me being outside where I could get to him really quick, and my daughter, which lives next door with her husband and family. But it didn't stop just there. It's touched the people's hearts that worked at the Leslie Fire Department, the EMT, the Sheriff's Department, because they couldn't believe he was still alive from what we witnessed. But I'm just so thankful that they've showed their love and their care the way they did for me and for my husband and our family. They've went above and beyond even after they've left my house that day. And I'm just very thankful and very proud of them. And I can't stress enough the importance of CPR. And since then, I've heard so many stories of people in cardiac arrest and just dropping. And I never knew the difference between cardiac arrest and a heart attack. But I just want to applaud just everybody behind us. And I'm sure there's more that didn't get to come. And I'm just so thankful that the Lord put everybody in their place and they were able to save them. And thank y'all for letting us come tonight.
Well said.
Thank you.
Do you want to say anything?
No,
Okay.
He's just glad. He's glad he's not 6 foot under is what he says, and still breathing.
Any other gentleman, lady, anybody? Yes, yes, sir. Come on, so they can hear you on TV.
I'll sit back down.
My name's Kevin Tolson. I live at 1675 York Highway. That's the Moss Justice Center. But these 4 officers that are standing before us, I'm just so proud of them. And I can guarantee you, if you ask them about their actions that day, that they will just tell you they're just doing their job.
Yeah.
And the gentlemen and women behind you also, they will probably tell you the same thing, that they were just doing their job. And I agree with you that the good Lord made this happen, not just these folks that are standing behind you. But I'm very proud of everybody, including the folks who aren't Sheriff's Office employees. Councilwoman Cox, thank you for thinking of recognizing this. We certainly could use hear about the good things that we do, that sometimes folks, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. And we certainly appreciate the recognition. And in keeping with their service, you can see that Deputy Nicholson has a pink band across her badge, and a couple of these guys are starting to look like gorillas. We don't always look like that. We have something called No Shave November, where if they donate to a charity that we support, that they can not shave. So that's a kind of an anomaly that you see them unshaven, but it's for a good cause. But again, I just want to say thank you to the council for recognizing it. Thank you, folks with the Sheriff's Office, Leslie Fire Department.
Okay, our next order of business is public hearings. Council to hold a public hearing and consider third reading of an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee agreement by and between York County, South Carolina and Speedwell Machine Works, formerly identified by its code name Project DRE as the sponsor, to provide for a fee in lieu of taxes, to provide for a public hearing, and to provide for other matters related thereto. Anybody here want to speak against? Against? Anybody want to speak in favor? Yes, sir.
My name is Eli Benfield. I'm a representative of Speedwell Machine Works, and we just want to take this opportunity to share our gratitude from Speedwell for your favorable consideration for allowing us to relocate to York County. We've been in business for almost 45 years now, and we're excited for another 45 years in York County as opposed to Gaston County. So again, we're grateful for it, and we are looking forward to moving ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bringing jobs here.
Thank you. We
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sir.
Looking forward to more.
Anybody else want to speak in favor? We have a motion to close?
Move to close. Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Do we have a new motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item. Council to hold a public hearing and consider third reading of an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of tax agreement by and between RG Lakemont LLC, the company, previously identified as Project Lemonade, in York County, South Carolina, whereby York County will enter into a fee in lieu of tax agreement with the company and providing for payment by the company of certain fees in lieu of ad valorem taxes, providing for special source revenue credits in connection with such agreement, providing for the allocation of fees in lieu of taxes payable under the agreement for the establishment of a multi-county industrial business park and other matters related thereto. Anybody here want to speak against? Against? Anybody in favor? Have a motion to close?
Move to close.
Second. Discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. New motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
I do.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Cox.
I asked a couple of questions of David Swinson before this meeting, and what I noticed and why I did not comment on the previous two, the one in the consent agenda, the FILO in the consent agenda, and the one we just voted on. Obviously, manufacturing coming to our town, that is huge. We need that. It translates into not only increased property tax, but also better jobs. The question that I have about this one in particular is that it's warehouse and distribution possibilities, and this is something that has concerned me a little bit as to whether or not we have too much of that, and what is the cost benefit of that, and what is the actual translation to the folks and impact to our roads. I would like to see us have some evaluation of that going forward, either from I don't know, Kevin's office or somewhere, to be able to actually look at the numbers and see and ensure that what we're doing when we make these decisions is turning out to be a benefit to the community. So those are my comments. I'm going to support this on first reading, but I would like to have. I would like to have that information set out for us and for us to evaluate that. And potentially think about taking the distribution out of the Economic Development Fund, 10%, because to me, we just need to evaluate that.
Mr. Shanahan.
Just as an FYI, I guess, our treasurer has been directed to actually create a new list that identifies that stuff, and we should be seeing what you're asking for in January, because part of what these things do is they show what's going to happen over the next 10, 15, 20 years, and we want to make sure that we start adding real dollars into it, so you see that information.
So you're talking about just the idea of information?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Swinson, did you want to say anything?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
As information that is provided in all of our projects, we outline the description of the project, the impact in terms of capital investment and jobs, the competitiveness of the project, the location of the project, all the things that would resonate to give you an informed decision. We also go into depth on the cost-benefit analysis, as well as what the taxation revenue is on the property as it would be in its current state, and then after the investment is made, what would be that revenue stream in the initial year of placement and then the over life of the time of the agreement, as well as the documentation is provided that the product development fund, which is in place by ordinance, what would be that revenue stream to that fund as we look to grow that fund, and then council can make decisions on any kind of future investments in new product development. So that's just a clarification. Be happy to work with council and talk more about the warehouse distribution versus manufacturing equation, how we balance that, and work to maximize growth of the tax base, because we know that the 60-40 revenue balance that we're trying to bring into more of an equilibrium is a challenge here in York County, and commercial industrial attraction is key, but keeping in mind a lot of other factors that will weigh as we look to the mix of warehouse distribution to manufacturing.
Yeah, maybe y'all can have lunch together or whatever to kind of go back over.
We've had some conversations.
Oh, okay.
Who has lunch?
Two of y'all.
Well, I think it's a bigger issue for the entire council to be able to see that analysis, and I don't think I'm the only one who's a little bit concerned that
You are not.
giving incentives to warehouse and distribution. I didn't realize this was third reading, so I guess I'm gonna, without having that information available, I'm gonna vote no.
Let me ask you
Yes,
a
sir.
question.
Mr. Roddey.
Since the development fund was mentioned, are we funding that every year out of the FILO as just a one-time initial
So all
10% goes over?
all the new deals that have come in since July 1, when that ordinance went into effect, would receive a 10% take from each of those FILO streams, and
One
that
time.
is going forward. No, it's every year.
Every year?
Yep,
So
and
you
that's,
get 10% every
yeah.
year?
Yep. And that can be adjusted over time as that pot builds, but right now we've had nothing, or we've had $800,000 in the account that, again, when you talk about the expenditures of what we're talking of investing potentially into new product, it takes a lot of money to make things happen.
Mr. Chairman, I think
Yes, sir.
this is part of a...
Mr. Johnson.
This is certainly part of a broader discussion. I don't support more warehouse distribution in the sense of it taking valuable land along the I-77 corridor, which could be used for other things. However, we don't own this property. This is privately held property that's sold, and somebody wants to build this here and wants to come to York County and do this. I think one of the things we need to start looking at and somehow get very serious about is how do we put ourselves in a better position to help direct economic development and the types of businesses we want in an area. Does that mean that we buy land, that we're using this 10% that we're pulling off on these fee and lieu, and that we actually try to go buy some property at some point so that we can help to decide who develops it? Or do we put that in infrastructure and allow us to say, as part of this, part of us building out this infrastructure, you're going to turn around and you're not going to make this distribution, you're going to make this manufacturing, you're going to do this, and kind of go after it that way. I do believe this is part of a much larger overall discussion that they have at the economic development meetings. You hear them. I know they've had you had a subcommittee that studied this, year and a half ago that went through this whole thing. I certainly think we should, as the Economic Development Committee should study it, but also the council, perhaps in the next, sometime in the winter or spring, kind of circle back to this and have a larger scale. Where are we going, and how do we want to make sure that it's funded and done correctly? Because you just don't want random distribution centers popping up in areas in which the land is just so valuable. So something to think about.
Mr. Winkler.
And I was just gonna say, I agree that we need to look at each of these projects on its own merit. Now, this is a spec building, so it's hard to say. It may not be distribution, it could be something else, because we don't know what it's gonna be. What we do know is the fact that they're planning on spending $21.4 million to put in this building. And that when the building is completed, whether there's anybody employed in it or not, it will pay approximately 10 times in fee property taxes what it does right now, sitting as it is. So that's, that's a part of the consideration as well. We talk about the 60-40 split between housing and residential and commercial. We don't want everything we do to be distribution, but do we knock this 10 times the income out because it could possibly be distribution at some point in the future? Any of our $300,000 warehouses that are sitting around, or facilities that are sitting around, could be turned into distribution at any time if they're in that area. So I support it because it is still industry. I don't on the surface support more and more distribution, but we don't know that that's what this is.
David, why don't before the end of the year, you and Bill get together to find a meeting where you could have a little presentation before
Sure.
council?
Sounds good.
We will update it. I mean, just as a reminder, they did the strategic plan, it was for information, that's where the property development fund came from. So we'll update that when you get it.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item. Did you get that? Council to hold a public hearing and consider third reading of an ordinance to amend the code of the County of York, South Carolina, disposal of waste at county landfill, Chapter 33, Sections 50.02 and 50.33 B and D, and to add Sections 50.33 E and F in order to define unsecured load, to set fees for transporting unsecured loads to the landfill, to clarify fee exemptions for individual York County residents, to add fees and requirements for solid waste credit accounts, and to provide for other matters related thereto. Anybody here want to speak against? Anybody want to speak in favor?
Move to close.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. New motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item, council to hold a public hearing, consider second reading of an ordinance to amend the code of the County of York, South Carolina, Chapter 154, entitled Subdivision Code, Sections 154.029, Preliminary Plat Review, subsections E and F, in order to allow the Planning Commission to approve residential subdivisions with reduced lot sizes that meet certain criteria, to provide additional criteria for the Planning Commission to approve patio home subdivisions, to provide for a public hearing, and to provide for other matters related thereto. Anybody here want to speak against? Against? Got a feeling a few people will be for. Anybody here want to speak in favor? Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or
Yes, sir.
Dr. Chairman, council members. One of the reasons I wanted to speak, because I wanted to make sure that this didn't get considered with you folks going back to the workshop and saying, nobody spoke for it, nobody spoke against it, nobody cares. So you already know what I'm going to say, but there's a lot of people that care.
Mark, sorry, I mean, obviously, can you give your name and address?
I'm sorry.
And address.
Mark Sleeper, address 3872 Concord Road in York. Okay, so starting off, I just want to thank you again for your service on the council, especially your work on trying to control our rampant growth in our area. We did attend the workshop the other night, and I was impressed and enlightened on how the system works, so I'm glad to see that you don't take these types of things lightly, and that's very encouraging to me. So I obviously want to give my support to your work to increase lot sizes. I felt like from being present at the workshop that the council is struggling to even make this small improvement, though, so I just wanted to speak to that. The proposed improvements, 500 square feet increase with 5% less as far as the variance. I believe you asked the staff for a recommendation how to best deal with growth in the area, and this is what they came back with. I certainly would have hoped it would have been higher, but the only thing that jumped out at me, and the only thing I want to say is I hope that you always ask yourselves who's being served. Is it the developers or is it the community? Because what I heard was from staff was they said that they felt it was a good compromise with developers and still achieve your goal to help control growth. So developers versus community, I hope you understand where we're coming from and where I feel we need to go. So I encourage the council to take Ms. Love's warning that rampant growth is coming to a neighborhood near each council district soon. I hope you'll make regulations with teeth and that will accomplish these goals. We have examples of tree ordinances. We have Lake Wiley overlays And I feel like they still don't necessarily accomplish the goal. So this is a step in the right direction. I hope that you'll raise lot sizes. This will continue to a final vote, and not worry too much if the developers go elsewhere. I heard someone say, again, it's a compromise. We don't want the developers to go elsewhere. Well, you know what? It's okay if they go elsewhere when we're talking about trying to control growth. It's coming to our neighborhoods way too fast. Clover, I researched this a little bit. There are 20 minimum lot size passed in June. It's 20,000 square feet. So we're discussing going from 8,000 to 8,500. 20,000 is about a half an acre. Now, I know there's other restrictions that can allow it to go lower than that, but 8,500 square feet is 2/10 of an acre for a minimum lot. So again, I hope that you won't agonize about making such a small change. And having said this, I just want to be clear that I fully, even though this is insignificant, or it's not insignificant, even though it's a small change, and I would hope for much greater, I fully support your work to increase the lot size. Each tool and every incremental improvement is a step in the right direction, and it may be that one component that makes high-density development financially unsuitable in our area. I do believe, though, that there should not be reductions. I know you're working towards that, and again, that's part of the compromise. But to me, and a lot of other people, allowing lot sizes of 5950 square feet is inadequate, and it's certainly not much of an improvement from where we are now. So I would certainly hope you'll reconsider that. But I know high density has its place. I'm sure the theory is a high density in some areas with proper safeguards can allow more land preservation in other areas. But I really feel that land preservation part of this equation is not being implemented countywide. In fact, it's just the opposite. So what I see too often is development is being allowed almost anywhere a developer gets a permit to clear cut. So thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody else want to speak in favor? God, such a shy order. Move to close. We have a second. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Need the new motion.
I want to move to approve second reading and amend the ordinance by deleting the criteria currently proposed in subsection E and substituting the following criteria, allowing a 25% reduction in lot size in the RC 1 and 2 and the RD 1 and 2 zoning districts. The development must have curb and gutter. The development must have public water and sewer services. The development must have 100-foot undisturbed buffers on the perimeter of the development. The property must be located within the urban services boundary and designated single-family residential, neighborhood residential, municipal infill, neighborhood center, town center, or community center as identified on the most recently adopted future land use map. And fifth, the level of service for the roads and intersections analyzed in the traffic impact analysis meet the level of service standards identified in 154.037E1 post-development.
We have a second.
Pre-development.
Pre-development.
Oh, it says post-development.
It's post-development.
Those are email corrections.
Second.
There was.
Email corrected it to free.
Hang on just a second. Is it pre or post?
Ask Andy.
The motion that we, is recommended is post-development.
Okay.
I know that Mr. Kendry, and he's obviously here, we've discussed it, and I think he sent a subsequent email agreeing that post-development is probably the way to go, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Kendry, but that's planning staff and management's recommendation. The reason being, it gives an opportunity to bring a road up to a level of service that's acceptable to the county and would be beneficial to the county moving forward.
Do you want this motion for the next part two, or just for this?
This is the way that Ms. Love read it is staff's recommendation.
Okay. Any comments, questions?
Yep. There was a second.
Who did the second?
I did the second.
Okay, that's right. Sorry.
Yeah, discussion, I mean, I appreciate everything that they said and have been listening. Sprawl, minimum lot sizes actually do what you're talking about, the opposite. They create, they don't preserve land either. But in areas like Lake Wiley, minimum lot sizes don't have a problem with. That's what the automatic reductions are for the other areas of the county. The discussion that we had, the pre-development discussion, I thought was one of the biggest reasons was you could identify it before you do your traffic impact analysis. The way that it's written post-development, you had to go through and do your traffic impact analysis and everything, and then find out that you might not qualify for a lot size reduction. This way, you know up front, so you can tell right away that that gets you away from looking at this property before you're so involved and so heavily invested that you figure out a way for it to work. That's where I thought the pre-development discussion came from. And it was basically a way that you can look at the SCDOT rating and you can know whether or not that you're going to be able to qualify for a lot reduction without having to do a traffic impact analysis.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I
Ms.
guess
Cox?
my recollection of what the council was getting at on the road issue was, we currently have a TIA. The TIA provides a way for the developer to, they have to meet that in order to get the original development. The question is on the incentive, how do we prevent, if we're gonna offer the incentive, the incentive ought to be something more. It ought to be that the road is either a C or better, regardless of those mitigation efforts and is independent of the TIA. So I guess I need some clarification from you guys as to why because really what we talked about was, if the road is C or better, then you can get the incentive. If it's not, you can't. And so that we were intending to provide something that's more than just the TIA. To me, the way this is written, it only follows the TIA. And it doesn't really give us any more protection.
Andy or Michael?
That's my recollection of the discussion, as well as Mr. Williams commented. The workshop was a pre-development analysis as the condition of the roads. What I've been informed is that there's a significant number of D roads, if not all state roads, are currently a D. So the implication for pre or post-development is that in a pre-development analysis, because of the current status of the roads at a level of D or worse, you never get to trigger
There's no flexibility.
You never get to trigger the impact. If you utilize a post-development analysis, you at least have the opportunity to evaluate the changes. And so that's up to council's will, whether you want it pre or post. But the discussion at the workshop was clearly from a pre-development standpoint, and that you made the analysis on the front end. But evidently the reality is that analysis may never take place because of the vast number of D roads.
Yeah, and I guess that was my understanding. That's in certain areas of the county where we have all these Ds, that's okay, that's fine, but it remains with the flexibility to have reduced lot sizes in places of the county that it makes sense remains. So that's, I guess I agree with that.
Okay. Mr. Johnson.
Does the pre versus post, I thought, and when I was explaining earlier today, why the use of the post as opposed to pre was that it would allow a developer to come in and actually mitigate the traffic, actually pump money into fixing the intersection or the roads, thus taking it from a D or an F or whatever it is, up to our standard. If that happens, it seems to me that's kind of what we're pushing for. If what we're saying is, no, we don't want you to have any chance to fix this road or make it better, we're just gonna keep going where we are, then it should say pre. If we want them to actually help us and be a partner in this, and I think you have to incentivize them to make them a partner. I mean, they're not gonna just volunteer to write us a check for our roads. That's why you would use post. I think, and in all honesty, if your road is an F, you probably don't have enough money you're gonna make in profit on your development. It's gonna bring it up to a C anyway. But at least they would have that opportunity. And I don't want to see us take that opportunity to have a developer really put money into our system to help us improve our road system and infrastructure away. But certainly I don't want to just open up the doors to development. So I get both sides of it, but that's why I was told post earlier.
I guess
Mr. Williams.
Yeah, the only thing that I think that's a valid point, but what I would suggest there is you add a number 6 that allows that to occur. If the number 5 is not met, then you can have the opportunity to improve it. That way, I mean, you're still, what I'm trying to do is keep anybody from investing a bunch of money into a piece of property, then trying to make it work and coming up here and telling us, I spent $30,000 and didn't find out until your TIA that I couldn't do it when you should have known because the road said it was failing in the first place. So I would think that we could retain the right to improve the road by adding a number 6 if it's already at failing level.
Can we?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Winkler.
I want to make sure I'm clear on, if with post-analysis, if it's failing and they are not improving it to failing, or if it's below that standard, then what we're saying is, with the post-analysis, they get no lot reduction, if I'm understanding this motion correctly. And that's the goal of what I'm hearing. You know, if it's pre, they get no lot reduction.
Right.
But if it's post, they get no lot reduction unless they improve the intersection. Then they might get a lot reduction, as long as it doesn't improve it and put it back down to failing again. So to me, it serves the same purpose. They get no reduction unless they improve it in the end.
So is that's, okay.
But yeah, I guess that's what I still say, the best way to handle that is to add another one, because what you're gonna have people, I mean, if it's failing, you know, that way you come in with your eyes open, you know the road's failing, you know you're gonna be done that. Otherwise, you go through their normal routine process, you get to the TIA, and then you find out you get no lot reduction, when you've been planning on a lot reduction all along.
So you're saying the developer has the potential to lose money with the post-word verbiage?
That or be so invested in the property that, like I said, they try to make it work and come up here and try to, and make it a political decision instead of a planning decision.
So Andy, is it possible to reword that and maybe add a number 6 to define what pre would be and what post would be?
Well, let me, before you answer, one thing, y'all are the experts. Once again, that's one reason I have a little heartburn with this process, the way it went this time. But I'm trying to get past that, but I don't want us not being the experts coming up with all the verbiage.
While they're consulting, would it not be, if it's failing now, DOT can tell us whether or not it's a failing intersection, so the developer knows whether or not they're gonna get it up front, whether we.
Well, they should, but not the way the ordinance is written.
But if the developer knows it's failing, and he knows that we might deny it on the back end, and he still wants to put the money in it to do it, that's the developer's decision to do it. If it's a failing intersection going in, and he wants to take put the money up to do it, knowing that we might deny him on the back end because of a post thing, then that's his decision to put his money into it if he
Did y'all
wants.
just hear what Robert said? I'm sorry. He was just pointing out that the developer can, from the start, find out from DOT the road grade and know up front what he's getting into if he pursues it forward, so.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, I think that was Audra and I's sidebars. Yes, sir, that's a fact. I mean, that's something that they can find out. And that information is available. What is, I guess, is harder to pin down is intersection grades. And so that's always integrated into your TIAs too. So to Mr. Williams' point, yeah, you kind of know what you're getting into when you're doing your initial due diligence on a piece of property and said, okay, I know this is an F. There's no amount of, thank you, Tim. There's no amount of reasonable improvements that I as a developer could make to bring this road up to a reasonable level of service. So I either take the minimum lot size and just make that work.
Yeah, I agree, but I think the key word, what Mr. Winkler said, is might. When you talk about might not get approved, they come and they work through it, and they turn planning decisions into political decisions, and that's what the better we can make the ordinance today, the more they stay planning decisions. That's my goal, but I certainly would want to defer to the planning staff for their expertise. But that's what I would like to see. That's my concern, and I'm open to any way.
Sure.
Yeah, the
bottom.
bottom.
I don't want them to have to do a TIA and then find out, whether they should have known or not. If it's written, if we add a 6 and put pre-development, then they will know, or at least in the ordinance, it's on their burden.
To take Mr. Williams' own words, y'all are the experts. I want to hear what the experts don't make us happy, do what's right.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Well, you might need more than 5 minutes.
No.
I think one of the things that maybe if I explain the process may help with Councilman Williams' question. Whenever a development comes in now, we pretty much have a mandatory pre-submittal meeting. DOT is there and staff is there. DOT and staff on the roads, they pretty much know what the level of service is, and they can tell the developer at that time, and they do some due diligence. If they know the standard is that post-development, you have to bring everything up to an acceptable level of service, I think they can weigh their options whether they should even go forward with the project. Off the top of my head, to try and come up with specific language, I'm a little hesitant to do that. The motion could be amended to be a little bit more general, to state that you want standards for pre-development and post-development.
Here we
I don't know
go
if
again.
Mr. Kendry, if that would work, and I can try and work on that when I have a little bit more
If
time.
that is provided if that's the will of council.
Yes.
But I still stand by the recommendation that staff made, that the post-development option gives the county the opportunity to get something, to possibly improve a level of service on a road. Let's not forget that if they don't meet these criteria, however we lay them out, that the best they can hope for is the minimum lot size. They get no reduction. This is an all or nothing opportunity, so they would get no reduction at all.
Well, I agree that the opportunity should be there, but also the ordinance should address what's most likely to happen. There's very few developers are gonna come in and improve the intersection so they can build a subdivision. So I agree, but I agree the option should be there. The way it's written, it seems like that's the primary focus, and you almost.
Conversely, I could also say that would be a growth management tool too, is to say, how much skin do you have in the game, developer X? Are you that invested and are that willing to engage due diligence on a piece of property to invest in that, knowing that you could potentially lose and not get your lot size? So I think that in and of itself could be considered a growth management
Can I
tool.
ask a question? So developer comes, that it's already, let's take away the incentive portion. Doesn't the development itself, no matter what we do here today, doesn't it have to meet the level of service standards under that ordinance? So before they can move forward, here's what they move forward with without the incentive. They still have to meet that standard before they get approved for that, right? The level of service. Or is that wrong?
No, as it exists today,
You don't.
we mitigate the
Okay,
impact.
I think I've got it now then.
Does that make
Okay.
sense?
But it has to bring it up to the level then. And that level
that's the way
means
we
C or
understand
better?
it.
That effectively
Well,
means a C or better?
No, it's gotta be, from a staff perspective, there are so many roads at a D that it's unreasonable. I think a D has become the new norm. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that in the TIA ordinance itself, the level of standard for a major collector is D, and for a minor, it's C. To ask for anybody to bring a major up to a C, it is almost so unrealistic, you might as well not even allow the exception.
So this is just for, what council talked about, if I'm remembering, is that we said, you don't get the incentive unless the road is safe to drive on, which is the C or better. I mean, that's kind of what we said. Is that not, am I wrong about that?
I think, yeah, I think that was one of these where we had to interpret to some extent and provide y'all with a motion to make as we interpret it, with the understanding that there was some discussion about C and D and what level of service is acceptable. So yes, ma'am, you specifically said, and I will stipulate that, yeah, a safe level of service, it needs to be brought to a safe level of service, but if our TI ordinance specifically says D is acceptable, that's, I think, what we're debating right now.
And this provides the opportunity for the developer out of his own pocket to bring it up to the acceptable level.
Yes.
So again, before it's just you have to mitigate your impact on a failing road. So you're still, an F's an F. What we're saying is if it's an F and you can bring it to a D,
Right.
then you get the lot.
We'll let you
get the
spend
minimum
your
lot
money
size.
to improve the road.
With your money.
Anybody else? Mr. Roddey?
It's been a lot thrown out. So it sounds to me like we're kind of offering something that we know people are not going to be able to come in and meet without sinking a lot of money into improving our intersections.
If, let me explain it this way. It's going to be more challenging for the developer. And the primary example I can give you is forgetting this ordinance right now, if there was an intersection and the only way to improve it was to put a traffic light in, but DOT said you can't have a traffic light, staff would still recommend approval of, say, a preliminary plat, because it's an impossible thing. DOT will not let you do that to bring it up. With this incentive and the way it's drafted, if the developer came back and said, well, the only way I can do it is put a traffic light in, but DOT won't let me do it, I say, I'm sorry. The answer is no.
Also, they don't get the
They don't get it.
I don't think growth management, by any stretch, means that things are easy. You don't make things easy when you want to manage something. And I think that, the fact that most of our roads are C or less, I think that's a problem in itself. And I don't know that we should, try to make a curve for that, to allow for that, because, quite frankly, we're who, I use the term we loosely, who have allowed that to happen. When you look at Highway 274, again, which is a pennies for progress road, and you've got a developer wanting to put in a development, a large development that takes an intersection as big as Allison Creek and 274 to an F rating, I mean, that's unacceptable. So I think this addresses that, but I also think that a road that's as a D, in my opinion, is a little low for the consideration. And, if a lot of people have to walk, that's okay with me, because we've had a flood of people coming through the door, and if we have to close that door and let fewer people in, I think York County as a whole will be better off.
Well, can we wrap this up now? Okay, and I just want to ask clearly, because my concern is to make sure it's fair and balanced. I remember when I first got on the council, nobody had jobs, the economy was down the tubes, and we were doing everything we can to get developers to develop and builders to build and all this. But at the same time, with the growth, we have to make sure it's smart growth in the future, and we have to manage it. So does the staff feel like this is a fair balance and will not cause undue harm to like the southern part of the county or the western part of the county?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's good enough for me then. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no?
No.
Got one no. Next item. Council to hold a public hearing and consider second reading of an ordinance to amend the code of the County of York, South Carolina, Chapter 155, entitled Zoning Code, Sections 155.009, Definitions 155.428, Lot Development Requirements, subsections A, Minimum Lot Setbacks, B3, RC1, RC2, Minimum Lot Requirements, B4, RD1, RD2, Minimum Lot Requirements, and B9, UD Minimum Lot Requirements. In order to revise the definition of patio home, revise the minimum lot size setbacks for single-family residential accessory buildings, and residential accessory uses, increase the minimum lot size for RC12, RD12 zoning district, to remove minimum lot size requirements for the UD zoning district, to remove the permissive 30% lot size reduction for single-family residential developments, to provide for a reduction in minimum lot size for small lot subdivisions, to add a minimum setback requirement for retention walls higher than 4 feet, to remove CB from residential accessory uses, to invoke the pending ordinance doctrine, and to provide for other matters related thereto. Anybody here want to speak against? Anybody in favor? Yes, sir. And name and address.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
My name's Don Clark, 3878 Concord Road in York. I just want to thank the council and the staff for their continued diligence on this matter. I also attended the workshop, and I was pleased to hear that every member has expressed a high level of concern about the growth issues and is willing to find a reasonable path forward. I know some of you have some concerns about unintended consequences, but in the end, I would assure you that market forces will adjust. In my business career before coming to beautiful York County, I lived in 8 different states and a lot of fast-growing areas, and despite the best efforts of local governments to control growth, most of the time they were behind the problem. And so I encourage you, as you're looking at this, if your concern is, do we err on the side of being weaker or being tougher, I would encourage you to be on the side of being tougher, because the market will catch up. And if you ever had a situation where you had an unintended consequence, you could always change that. But when you're behind the 8 ball, it's too late to make those changes, and I know we've experienced that in some parts of the county already. York County has an incredible amount to offer. Our vision statement is that we provide an environment where citizens and businesses can thrive and succeed, and our mission statement is to provide quality services in an open, efficient, and responsive manner. What we have right now is we have quality of life, and we have access, and we have quality schools and services. We've talked just about the impact on roads. We haven't even talked about the impact on community services and schools, which is certainly part of the equation here. So again, I speak in favor of this, and I thank the staff for their diligence, and I thank the council, and I think this is a responsible step forward. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Anybody else want to speak in favor? Billy?
My name's Billy Hagner, 1901 Voyager Road, York. Just want to briefly say I have been before y'all several times over the past 3 or 4 years and expressing my concern about growth, road congestion, clear cutting, lot size, excessive grading, and runoff into the lake. And that continues to be my concern. I do see this as definitely being a positive, in a positive direction, helping. It does impact some zoning districts more than others, but overall it looks like it is definitely a plan in the right direction to help alleviate some of our problems. And I appreciate the work y'all have done on it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to speak in favor?
Move to close.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Got a new motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Yes, sir. Mr. Roddey?
I just want to touch on real quick, we talk about the unintended consequences, and I'm speaking on the whole package, what we just talked about on the previous vote and what we're doing here now. I think some of those unintended consequences is the more that we put more restrictions and more hoops, obviously, we put for developers to jump through. One of those unintended consequences, we're going to see the price continue to go up because developers typically just pass those costs on into the price of the home. And already we're seeing home prices on new construction now is probably, up considerable amount now than we saw 4 or 5 years ago. I have no idea what the new construction price is right now, but I can tell you the homes in York County are starting to skyrocket with the cost of living here in Rock Hill and York County and Clover, and definitely Fort Mill has seen a real big spike in prices. So I think that's one of those unintended consequences that we're gonna see or have been seeing over the years. We even had some discussion on the quality of these homes starting to come down a little bit. We talked about these big tract builders coming in, building 50, 60, maybe 100 homes in some of these subdivisions. So I wish we would start looking at ways to shore up some quality bills going forward. But obviously this is a way to kind of try to get a handle on growth in some areas, but other areas I don't think it's going to be too much benefit to it because builders going to keep building and the price is going to continue to go up, and they're just going to pass a lot of these costs on to the home buyers. So look out, home buyers, you're about to be in for a new spike in prices throughout the area.
Is that it?
Yep.
And that kind of touched on one of my concerns originally that I think Mr. Winkler tagged on to, that I know what it's like to work hard and earn every little thing you have in life and earn it the hard way. and I want everybody to be treated fairly and have that opportunity. So I'm hoping and I'm trusting staff that this is not going to interfere with that ability, because it makes you a much stronger person, too, when you work hard and get rewarded. Question on the motion, yes, Ms.
Now that
Cox.
you've said that, I think what I do want to make clear is that I obviously do support growth management tools. I think we need them, and I appreciate what the staff has done. My vote on no for the last reading was because I don't think that we as a council should be approving development on failing roads. And I think if there's a way for us to address that we should do it. And to me, that doesn't really accomplish it. I do support this particular motion because it's the first part of that. But I'm hoping between second and third that maybe we flesh out some misunderstanding, since we just saw the motion and we had a different opinion from our county attorney versus staff as to which one accomplished what council said at the last meeting. That is my concern there, is that we obviously want growth, we want good growth, we want homes that are going to last, and that folks don't get in and are falling apart in the next 3 years. It creates an atmosphere in our county that it doesn't result in long range investment. People don't want to do that. We don't want to be a cookie cutter county. We want to be something different.
Mr. Winkler.
I was gonna say, since I did raise that concern last time and my name was brought up, I did want to just mention that staff was able to help me understand and alleviate that concern a little more. I don't believe that this change in lot size will drive any of those people out. You know, I do think that is a concern. My children had some issues with that. But what both of them wound up doing, there's a difference we talk about with a lot of this between new construction and old construction too. And what my children wound up doing was buying something that was an older home, old construction, for their starter home. They didn't buy something new. So I don't believe that this ordinance will drastically make that big a difference in the price for a new startup family, and that's why I support it. So.
For the same feedback. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item, rezoning action. Consider third reading, case number 1723, to rezone from AGC to RD1 at 424 Daves Road in the York community.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes,
move
ma'am.
to deny this request.
Somebody?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion? There being none,
Well, I mean, I think it's
Ms.
worthy.
Cox?
It's worthy of some discussion, and I noticed that Mr. McTuck is here, and I'm thankful that you're here. I spoke with you guys, and have had several meetings, also spoken with folks in the community as well. I'm gonna tell a story that is probably gonna bore you to death, but to me, it makes sense. So, I'm a first-time lawyer in my family. Nobody has gone to law school before I did. When I was 5, I said I wanted to do it. So, that's what I kept on with, this vision of what I wanted to do. When I finished college, ended up being blessed with a child that was sooner than what I thought I would have a child. So had to spend that next year working as a paralegal at City of Rock Hill, actually. And started thinking about what I wanted my daughter to do and what I wanted her to see, and realized, you know what, if I want to go to law school, I still need to do it. So I quit my job. My husband and I moved to Lancaster for a couple years, lived in a mobile home. I commuted back and forth to law school from Lancaster. And it was a huge investment. Prior to that, the city was going to give me an increase in salary to try and keep me from going. And we discussed it and said, you know what? Our vision, our long-term plan is to do this. Win, lose, or draw. If I fail, if I don't pass it, so be it. We did that, and I'm glad that I did it. But what does this have to do at all with this rezoning? What it has to do for me is that this was a tough one. I think the McTucks are good gentlemen, and I think that you've handled this professionally. What concerns me about this rezoning, though, is that I think it requires that we have a vision for our county and that we stick to our vision. And to me, our vision is in the comprehensive plan. It's not something I created. It's something that the people in this community created. And when you look at that comp plan, and I asked Karen if there's any way to put up on there what This is our vision. This is at least what the folks in our community have asked that we do, that we plan things based upon consistency with this plan, and there's the map. And all of this green, most of that's in Robert, in my district. And so when I was evaluating what do we move forward with it, that green is actually AGC. Now, there's a difference of interpretation of how staff views what that means, but, you know, and does it translate directly with our zoning? No, according to them. I think this is a discussion that would be worthy of a workshop.
Oh, God, you said it.
Because I do think we all need to at least discuss it, because there are questions about, if you let all that green go to 1 acre, 1 unit to 1 acre, can the water sustain it? Can the stormwater sustain it? Are we gonna be able to sustain roads? Are we gonna be able to do that? And the answer is no, it can't. So when we make these decisions, I think we have to look and see what precedent are we setting? And I think here are the reasons why I can't approve this one. It's AGC in the comp plan. The proposed density that's being requested is significantly more than what's currently allowed, from 1 to 5 to essentially 1 to 1, 1.3. All of the houses surrounding this particular house are on 5-acre parcels. So there's a significant departure. The conditions, and this is probably the key point, the conditions that are proposed by the developer, which were things that I thought were good things, but we cannot enforce them because not all of the property is in the rezoning request. There's only 10 acres that's in this rezoning request. In order to actually make those conditions stick, including that you won't further subdivide the portion of property that's on the inside, you have to make sure that it's included at the front end on the rezoning request. That's not what has happened here. So we can't do that. Stormwater, I asked for some assurances on the front end as to whether or not we could make sure. There was a gentleman across the street who was very concerned about how the water was gonna run off into his property. And if you ride down there, it will look very different to have 7 houses lined up when there's only 2 across the street. The way that it was structured, he's concerned that the water comes into his front yard. Well, right now, I don't have any assurance that if we do this, that this is gonna protect him. And I think that we ought to be able to find a way to do that before we approve a rezoning, because once it's done, it's done. The property was purchased by the owner just in June for significantly less than what the property is. So I don't understand why we can't have any further, and it was made very clear that there was not gonna be any more concessions. I would have worked on that. But when there were not an interest in doing that, I felt like I needed to deny this, because how am I going to answer to the folks across the street when there's a lot of AGC development as to why they can't go to 1 to 1.1? So for all of those reasons, I do value good development. And this is not personal. This is something that, to me, we have to maintain a vision for our county, and in order for me to stick by that for my constituents, that's why I did that.
Any other yes, Mr. Winkler.
I'd just like to say, I struggled with this one because I heard from some of the residents and neighbors, and, you know, at first look, as we said last time we had them before us, you know, this is, I believe, stick-built better than the option that could be there in some ways. But I had some issues and questions raised by neighbors, and I talked with Ms. Cox today, and we discussed it at length, and she was telling me some of the other issues that have come up since then, and so that's why at this time, as it is with the concerns with the other parcels and that type of thing, that's why I supported her motion.
Anybody else? There being none, I'll just say too that I always trust that councilman's district and their knowledge of that district, and I always respect that. So I'm gonna side with Ms. Cox, but I wish this was able to be worked out. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, I'm gonna read this into the record first. Consider third reading case number 1728 to rezone from AGC to RUD1, 5 acres at Atkins Road in the York community. But having read it into the record, the staff requests no action be taken because the applicant has withdrawn the application.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may, we don't have anything in writing, so I would like for Mr. Heline to state on the record that he is formally withdrawing the application.
Good evening, Tim Heline, 1830 Hansmill Highway. I'm withdrawing my application request for rezoning that 5 acres on Atkins Road.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It's in the record, and that's all you need, correct? Okay, next item, new business. Council to consider authorizing contract negotiations regarding RFQ 2459 for consulting services for the development impact fee feasibility study.
Move to approve.
Second. Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item. Consider approval of $16 million loan from the general fund to jumpstart Penny Swore projects if the referendum is approved by the voters.
Move to approve.
Second. And here again, that's only if it's approved. So that's how we're going to save money, because we have such solid financial health of our general fund. We can do that to assist. Yes,
I'm sorry,
Mr.
quick
Roddey.
question. So if we're gonna make this $16 million loan, what does that leave us in reserves?
For how long a period? For how long a period?
Or you can just state our reserves at this point.
Our reserves will still be sufficient and adequate to carry us through without having to dip into reserve funds in the second half of the year. That's what you're getting after.
Thank you, sir.
Did you want to make a comparison with Rock Hill's reserves?
No, I did
Oh,
not. There's no comparison.
Okay, gotcha. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider adoption of the water sewer rate structure as recommended by,
Raftelis.
thank you, sir, Raftelis Financial Consultants, and authorize the amendment of the county ordinance consistent with water and sewer rate forecast set out in the Raftelis report.
Move to approve.
Second. Discussion. Question on the motion. Yes, sir, Mr.
So
Roddey.
we're having to pass on an additional fee to our customers with this increase?
Yes.
It's a rate increase, yes, sir.
Yeah. And when the last time we passed that increase on? Do we know?
Many years ago.
That election's over.
2000?
Okay.
15 years ago, Mr. Roddey.
We've been good stewards with our taxes.
Absolutely.
Yes, we have. I agree with Mr. Roddey.
Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. There are no committee reports. Do we have any council member non-agenda comments? There being
Wait a
none.
minute, I forgot to add on my story about going to law school,
Okay.
that I still have
Yes,
student
ma'am.
loans and I'm still paying for those things. So I don't know if the vision is quite exactly what, but you got to stick with it.
Okay, that was great. And then nobody signed up for citizen concerns, so do we have a motion for executive session?
Yes, sir. I move we go into executive session to receive legal advice regarding Fort Mill School District proposed impact fee and the Association of Legal Counsel with Attorney's Office for proposed zoning changes.
And next page?
Next page.
Oh, and I think we also ought to discuss a contractual matter regarding the administration of the Veterans Park Grant Award.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We will re-adjourn at 7:25.
Re-adjourn.
Okay, we have 2 action items coming out of executive session. Do we have a motion?
Yes, sir. I move we authorize the county attorney's office to associate legal counsel with Smith and White.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Do we have another motion?
Yes, I move that York County to accept the land for the York County Veterans Park from the York County Veterans Advisory Council and to immediately reimburse T.J. Martin the amount of $4,625. Once the county has ownership of the property, the committee of the majority of veterans will be used as an advisory committee.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion, Ms. Cox.
Just want to make sure that I understand that the county is not getting into generally doing parks at this point, and it's my understanding that no general funds will be used towards this initiative, that any cost for maintenance and out-of-pocket cost will be borne by City of York, or it will be a deduct on the annual rec allocation.
Yes, ma'am.
And that our county manager is going to be in charge of ensuring that all that happens.
Yes, ma'am. And it won't be in writing.
Any other discussion? Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Do we have a motion to close the meeting?
Move to close.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.